So one of the things that I got when I was using my jig that works with dowels is there's a tenon center assortment pack from Rockler. Well, the old one was TC827179 Rockler number. It's an 8-piece set, and it comes with these things, and basically you drill the hole for 1/2 inch, 3/8, 5/16, or 1/4, put this down in, you set your other part on top, and you press it once it's lined up, and that puts a divot of the center of where you're supposed to drill on the opposite side. So that makes it a little bit easier when you're trying to go from one board to the other. You can better line up and know where to drill. And this is one of the problems I ran into on those Chinese elm jewelry boxes, where I had issues of trying to get it so that the hole lined up going between the two pieces. That was using a 3/16 inch solid brass rod for there, and this was labeled solid brass rod. I was under the impression that brass is not supposed to be magnetic if it's actually brass, and for the most part I think that's right. However, one of the things that I got were a bunch of these super strong neodymium type magnets. Okay, so there's one. Yeah, that's a solid brass rod, and that's a cut. Maybe because I cut that off with the hacksaw, that got magnetism added to that. Let's try the other side. Nope. I did not know. I mean, it's not a super strong thing. If you tilt it at all, it wants to. Oh, there, it picked it up. It's not super strong, but those magnets are strong enough that, and there's no sticky stuff on them. So, besides, even if there was sticky stuff, that wouldn't, like, that jumps up and grabs it. Let me try it one more time. Come on. Yeah, that jumps upward. So even if there were sticky stuff, that wouldn't cause it. So yeah, these magnets are strong enough that they do a weak attraction to brass, which is kind of cool. Because this brass rod is 3/16, and this is what I use for those other jewelry boxes, and these magnets are 3/16, and these are what I want to use as the lid clasps, or I should say as the magnet clasp for these recipe boxes. I need some way to easily figure out where to put it in. So for these, if we say this is the front, so I want to drill one of those down in, cover it with a thin slice of wood, and then be able to figure out where in the lid to drill the other spot. That way when we put this down, it will close and lock or latch or whatever you want to call it. So the easiest way, well, what I've done in the past was lots of very careful measuring, down to the less than 64th, and, line it up, and then figure out where. But I think and what I didn't have the previous time I did boxes like that with magnets like this, I did not have a lathe. I now have a lathe. This is something I could theoretically make that's 3/16, assuming I have a piece of steel that's big enough, which I should. That's a long lead in. I'm going to try and make something like this for 3/16, because then it'll not only work for all these magnets, but it'll also work for the brass rod for those other boxes. So now it's trying to try it on the lathe. So, as always, you face the end off, and I'm trying to use my little angle cutter to make the little point. And then I realized I had to adjust things, because with the cutoff bar, I need to have it straight, and so I had to use my big wrench to hold that to try and get it straight, and that was a bit annoying, but I finally got it to sort it out. And because otherwise it hits the corner of the cross slide on there, and the part that it's attached to, it hits the corner and it won't go down far enough to be centered. So there's one done, and cut it off with a little hacksaw, and I'm making the second one just because, practice, plus hopefully the second one's a little better. The second one I did more of chamfer on the edges, but still cut it off. And now I'm testing it, and so put one down in, seems to work. It's right at 3/16, so the hole has to be a little bit sloppy for that to fit down in, but that's okay. And getting it back out, you just need pliers, and that works. think that's going to work. So I had this scrap bolt from something. It was the right size to make it smaller, and then I just made points. I made 2 of them, just, well, 1 for practice and 2 just to make sure it was going to work. This one's a little bit better than the first one because this one I chamfered the edges before I took it out, so this one has a little bit of a sharp edge on it, and the point's kind of sharp. But when you put them in the holes, down in, and then you take your piece of wood, and there are no dents on this side. You set it in place, press it down, and now there are 2 dents on this side. So that will let me put that in the box and drill for the magnet sections, which would be nice. That'll make it easier to put the magnets in. And that will also make it easier for any future boxes where I use this brass rod for those like Chinese elm boxes or such, because that's the same size as the shaft. So it's going to be cool.